What's up, everyone? Kriddle here, and recently made a video going over attributes or stats and what they do, and we talked about dexterity. There were still some people that were speculative about that dexterity does not work with spellcasters, and I'm here to kind of show you definitively that it does. And then also we're going to go over armor class and resistances and how those kinds of things work, because I've been getting, because of that video, people have been coming in saying, hey, I loved your video on this. Can you please talk about armor class and resistances and how those work? So I'm going to try to do that. Obviously, I don't have any of the direct formulas, so I don't have all this math that I'm going to be able to show you, but I'm going to tell you how it works, so what you need to look for. So first and foremost, dexterity. We do know that increasing dexterity increases your accuracy, which is your hit rating. So it specifically says on here it increases your hit rating, and hit rating increases your accuracy. So there you go. Now, how do we know that that works for spells? Well, to know that we work for spells, we're going to jump right over here to my wizard. And on my wizard, we have this ability right here called Sure Spell. Sure Spell says increase the hit rating for your next offensive spell by 50 for up to 20 seconds. So if we look right over here under accuracy, we have 2% accuracy. This is under the melee tab. There is no tab for spells right now, but under the melee tab, it says accuracy 2%. We click that Sure Spell, and boom, it jumps up to 4.78%, meaning that we will hit more of our spells more often on those enemies. So there you go. That right there shows that accuracy does, in fact, work for spells. So now that we know that, let's go into a little bit more information about how hit rating and defense and those kinds of things all work, because people have been asking me about that. So first and foremost, what you need to know is, how do you hit a mob, right? That's going to be based on your skill. So if I take my blade skill, for example, I have 102 blade skill. That number is then going to be checked against something on the mob. Well, it doesn't check it against your armor class. It doesn't check it against resistances. It doesn't check it against any of those things. It actually checks it against the mob's defense. So we go down here to the mob's defense, and that's 102 for me. So it would check my 102 blade against the 102 defense. Now, again, same thing with the stats video. I don't have all of the formulas, so I can't tell you exactly how much that benefits you. But in my testing, I can kind of give you a little bit of an idea of how it works, so that we can, make ourselves better players going forward. So theoretically, the blade 102 versus defensive 102, those are the same level. So when I try to hit something with 102 defense and it's trying to defend with 102 defense, there is about a 50-50 chance that it would deflect or not hit. It would just miss outright. That's not 100% accurate, but we're good. I'm using that for an example. So let's say that it's a 50-50 chance on hitting from a 102 to a 102. I then would add in, I would come over here and I would add in my accuracy bonus of 7%. So that would move me up by 7%. I could then do debuffs on the mob, reducing their defense down a little bit. So that makes it to where the mob now doesn't deflect, or I don't miss as often, moving them down, and you can see how that would end up skewing it to our favor. So you could get upwards of 80 or even 90% hit rate or hit chance on a mob by reducing their defense, increasing your offensive skills, and increasing your accuracy. So that's basically how that works. Now, once a hit goes through, let's say that your offensive skill goes to their defensive skill. Your offensive skill is higher. It's considered a hit. At that point, the mob has a chance to dodge. And if it does dodge, then obviously they dodge the ability. If it doesn't dodge, it has a chance to parry. And if it does parry, then there's no damage. And then finally, it has a chance to block. And if it blocks, what it does is it reduces damage. So what we're going to do is we're going to put on our shield. You can see here that I have a 30% chance to block a skill. So if somebody comes in and hits me, and their attack skill is higher than my defense, it will come through. I'll try to dodge it. I'm don't dodge, I don't parry, it comes to the block. When it comes to the block, I have a 30% chance to block it. Let's say that I do block that attack. I then come down here and I look at my block value. The block value says 33. I don't know, again, the exact numbers on this, but from my testing, it seems to be about 33%. So that block value is out of 100, and I will block about 33% of the damage that comes in. So if they come in with 100 damage, I will reduce that by 33. The rest will then come to me. Okay, so you're not completely negating damage with block, you're just reducing the amount that it does. And you can see those numbers fly up on the right-hand side whenever, or usually it's on the right-hand side when you're getting hit by an enemy. It'll literally say, you know, a number, and then next to that, it'll say blocked. You will not see it down here in your combat window. It never says blocked down there. It only, well, from what I can find, it never says blocked down there. It only shows my incoming actual damage. So it'll say 16 blocked, meaning that 16 of that damage was not blocked. The rest of it was blocked. That 16 will then come down into your chat window down here, and that'll come onto your character. And then it'll check that against your armor class. Your armor class, from as far as I can tell, is about, it's a number out of 1,000. If you get to 1,000 armor class, you're theoretically reducing 100% of the physical damage that you take. So I have 250 armor class currently right now, and if I then block, let's say 100 damage hit, I block that hit, it goes into 33 damage of that goes away. So now I have what's that, 67. Yes, 67. Golly, math's hard today. You have 67 damage that comes in, and then I have 25% of that I'm mitigating of that damage, assuming that I don't dodge or parry it further, right? So I would have dodged or parried it first, though, so we know that after the block, it guarantee will come through and hit you. So it'll reduce that by 25. So it'll take that 67 minus 25%, and then the final damage will go into your health pool up here. So that is effectively how that works. The higher you get your armor class, the more you're going to mitigate damage. So hopefully you understand how defense works for physical. Now we're going to talk about magical, this is where there's a little bit of contention, where people are not following through. They're not seeing all of the stuff, and they have a lot of confusion with this. So the same thing happens with magical spells, because we also have a magical defense. Now, I don't have any magical abilities over here, but if we go over here and we look at our wizard again, so let me pull that up. We go over here to the wizard, and you can see I have skills like evocation, innervation. There might be some other ones, conjuration. These are all an augmentation. These are all going to be your spellcaster skills. Most of these are the most important one is going to be evocation, right? Most of your spells, your damaging spells, for example, evocation here. Most of your damaging spells are evocation. When it comes to something like arcane chords, it's conjuration. You can see all of these things by looking at the skill and which skill it's going to check. So you want to actually skill up all of these things. So why would you want to skill these up? Well, you want to skill these up. Sorry, let me come back over here. You want to skill these up because it's going to check it against magic defense. So much like your blade skill goes up against defense, your evocation, your conjuration, all of those will go up against magical defense. If your skill is higher than that of the mob, then you're going to have a higher chance of landing the spell on them. If it's lower, you're going to have a lower chance. So basically, it's the exact same thing as your melee attacks, and then you increase that chance by your accuracy. If you have something like an enchanter has the ability to lower magical defense, that increases your chance to hit that mob with a spell. So that is where all that comes from. Now, this is pure speculation, but I'm really sure this is how it works, but I can't prove it. It's very hard to prove this part of it. when you cast like a mesmerize spell or a debuff on a mob, it still does check your skill versus the magical defense of the mob. A lot of people are getting that confused, thinking that it's checking resistances, and it does not check resistances at this point, and I'll explain that here in just a second. It checks it against the magic defense to see if your spell actually lands. Once the spell actually lands, which your debuff either lands or doesn't land, once the spell actually lands, that's when it goes to the resistances. So hopefully that makes sense. If you cast a mesmerize spell on something, it checks its magical defense versus your mes skill level. That's basically what it does. Now, once a skill once a mob gets high enough level, it becomes immune to your mesmerize spells. And I believe that is because your skill level isn't high enough to overcome the magic defense of that mob. So if that mob has a lower magic defense, you might actually be able to mesmerize a higher level mob than you normally could. So that's that. Now, let's say you cast a damaging fire spell on a mob, and your evocation skill and or accuracy is higher than the skill of the magic defense, or it just overcomes their magic defense. It doesn't necessarily have to be higher. It could be lower. You still have a chance to hit something with a higher magical defense. It's just a lower chance, which is why you generally miss when you're trying to hit something like a yellow, orange, or red mob. So if you do get that spell off, and it gets through that magic defense, and it's a fire-based spell, it will then come down here to resistance, and it will check the resistance of the mob, which will say, hey, this mob has 25% resistance. If you do 100 damage with your fire spell, and it has 25% resistance, you now do 75 damage with your fire spell. That's how it works. If they have 50% resistance, you do 50% damage. And if they have 100% resistance, you do near 0 damage. I think it's like still 1 damage or something, but you're supposed to do 0 damage. This was also proven over on Joppa's stream a couple of days ago when he went over resistances to show that they do work properly. So this is out of 100. Resistances are always out of 100. Now, if you go over 100, let's say you have 101% and you do 100 damage, fire damage to a mob, it will heal that mob for 1% of the damage, which is 1 damage. And that goes all the way up to 200%. You can also get negative fire resistance. So what this means is when you have someone in your party, I know that summoners can do this, for example. I can expose a mob, and then a summoner can come in behind me and reduce the mob's resistances by 15. That means it's reducing the mob's resistance by 15%, effectively increasing all elemental damage by 15%. So you can still miss the mob with your spell based on the magic defense, but if that spell still gets through, it will do 15% more damage every single time. Now, there is still a little bit of discrepancy there because there is a range, much like there is with melee attacks. So you could take your melee attack, you can hit something, and there's a range of damage from like 1 all the way up to 30 sometimes, and there could be anywhere in between, which is why sometimes melee attacks don't feel that great. Even when they crit, a 1 critting goes up to a 2, so it's not it's not that much. But if you get a 30 damage hit that crits, it goes to 60, and you can see the big difference. That's where a lot of confusion I think comes in. The same thing happens with your spells. Your spells have a range to them, and most spells don't say, hey, it does 60 to 100 damage. They just say does a moderate amount of damage or a major amount of damage or whatever. So when you cast a spell, it does X amount of damage in this range. If it hits through the magic defense, then it goes to resistances, and then it reduces it by that amount, or possibly increases it if you can get the resistance to a negative. This can be seen, I believe, through something like cleric spells do bonus damage to undead. Clerics do divine magic, which is this one down here. So divine resistances. I assume how they do that is based on undead have negative divine resist. So they just take increased damage from divine spells, which is one way to do that. They could have some sort of multiplier in there as well that just says, if it's divine damage, multiply it out. But most likely they just give undead, very, very low, if not negative resist. Anyway, hopefully that helps everyone out to understand. I've heard that like lowering magic resist helps enchanters get their mesmerize spells off. To my knowledge, that does not happen. Magic damage is something like this over here. So if we go back over to my wizard, you can look down here at elemental weaving, and it says elemental weaving stacks into a powerful magical attack. So that's going to do magical attack. This one right here is going to do fire damage. This one's going to do cold damage. This one's going to do shock damage. So you can see where the damage is going and what resist you need to lower to be able to hit those mobs. So that is basically how that works. Anyway, hopefully this video helps out. If it does, please like, subscribe, follow, all that kind of stuff. Come on over to my Twitch stream. I do stream every single day, and I'm happy to answer, any questions that you guys may have. I may know the answer. I may not know the answer. Chat may know the answer. So come on over and ask your questions. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.